Welcome to the chamber here on New Day. This morning we are looking at jobs for the disabled, and unemployment in Ghana has been the biggest challenge for both the unemployed and the government. Now, it's however worse for people living with disability. This morning my guest is Kweku Afrifa Insia Asare. Good morning. He's a legal practitioner.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It looks like we both got the memo. We're color coordinating here. Right. Okay, so this morning we're going to be taking a look at employment for the disabled, and I understand that there's a law that governs it.
Yes,
can you give us a bit of a background?
Basically, like...
But before you get into that, let's just go and look at this report that Godfred Tanam filed.
All right.
Unemployment, stigmatization, social exclusion, negative social-cultural perception, poverty, and limited access to education are some challenges facing persons with disability in Ghana. The 2010 Population and Housing Census puts the population of severely disabled persons at 737,743, representing 3%. An estimated 70% of persons with disability reside in the rural areas. These people go through a lot of challenges, including access to information and opportunities. The current employment situation in Ghana affects the job opportunities of almost everybody. Disabled people are at greater risk when it comes to employment.
As soon as they see you with a disability, the public perception is that you cannot do anything. You will be a burden on them when they employ you, and that you cannot pay in for the services that maybe they require from you.
The employment rate of persons with disability is lower than non-disabled people in Ghana. People with disability have difficulties in competing in the job market, taking into consideration poor education and limited skills.
Because of technology, can do any other work that the ordinary person is doing, and even work more efficiently. Or they also forget that if the person is physically disabled, they are only the structures, or just to find out maybe the particular sector that person can face in there, but they don't look at that.
Rates of unemployment among the general adult disabled population vary from country to country, but on average tend to be at 40 to 60 higher than for the general non-disabled population. This is true even in developed countries with well-organized skills training programs to help in the transition from school to work. The Disability Act of Ghana 715 states that a person shall not discriminate against a prospective employee on the grounds of disability unless disability is in respect of the relevant employment. It further states in paragraph 89 that the ministry shall assist to secure jobs for persons with disability.
Right, so we're looking at jobs for the disabled, and Kweku Afrifa Insia was just about to tell me about the law that governs disability.
Right. So like I was saying, basically like any other endeavor of our national life, laws or legal regime regarding disability and how we should treat disabled people found right in the Constitution itself. If you look at Chapter 5 of the Constitution that basically deals with fundamental human rights and freedoms, there are basically a number of provisions that would associate with disability and our dealership with disabled as a nation. Basically, Chapter 5 would construe to mean that there should not be discrimination regarding rights and responsibilities as a nation people. Particularly, Article 17 Clause 1 says that all persons shall be equal before the law. Article 12 Clause 2 says that every person in Ghana, whatever race, place, origin, political opinion, and all those we keep on hearing, are supposed to be equal before the law and treated equally. Now, what this would construe to mean will be then that irrespective of anybody's position, our treatment before the law must be equal. Now, the Constitution in its wisdom realizes that there will be some category of persons who may not have been treated fairly if that equality is applied to them. And so if you look at Article 17, Clause 4, it says that nothing in this article shall prevent Parliament from enacting laws that are reasonably necessary to provide A, for the implementation of policies and programs aimed at redressing social, economic, or educational imbalance in the Ghanaian society. Now, Article 29, specifically in the Constitution, deals with disabled persons. And Clause 8 thereof says that Parliament shall enact laws as are necessary to ensure the enforcement of provisions of this article. In effect, it makes a general or a special case for disabled people, and then goes ahead to mandate Parliament as the lawmaking body of the nation to actually enact laws to make sure that their disability does not affect them adversely regarding their national lives.
So what kind of laws have Parliament passed to this effect?
Basically, and so consequent upon this article, Parliament in the year 2006 went ahead to pass the Persons with Disability Act of 2006, which is Act 715 that was cited in your report. Right. And Section 59 of that Act, persons with disability is basically defined or are defined to mean individuals or an individual with a physical, mental, or sensory impairment, including visual, hearing, or speech functional disability, which gives rise to physical, cultural, social barriers that substantially limit one or more of the major life activities of the individual. And so you realize that the definition is probably wider than we would actually put to the meaning of disability in ordinary parlance.
So there's a bit of a problem with the wording.
Not necessarily, but what I construe that to mean is that the law actually broadens that which makes up who a disabled person is.
Right. Let's look at the job market, and let's be honest here. People with disabilities are discriminated against. So what exactly does the law, or how are persons with disabilities protected from employment discrimination?
Right. Now, Section 1 of the Act 715 says that a person with disability shall not be deprived of right to live with that person's family and a right to participate in social, political, economic, creative, or recreational activities. Now, the emphasis for the purposes of our discussion this morning will be on economic. So if the Act basically enjoins every Ghanaian to make sure that disabled persons are not discriminated on economic grounds, on the basis of the fact that a person's fundamental human right includes his economic right, and within or inherent within the economic right is the right to access job
employment,
then it means that for all intents and purposes the disabled person must be afforded every opportunity that is given any other person in terms of job opportunities.
So what kind of practices and activities are covered by the employment non-discrimination requirement?
Basically, if you look at the employment non-discrimination requirement under the Act, it spans Section 9 to 15 under various headings, and essentially, in context, what it says is basically to make sure that disabled persons, as far as their disability may impair them, should be afforded every opportunity to make up for that impairment. I've tried to summarize this. So to the extent that their disabilities may impair them, we are enjoined as a nation's people to make sure, and this is a right afforded them, and this is an act of Parliament which has the full force of the nation, to make sure that their disabilities are for lack of a better word, let me say, are made up for by such incentives as are necessary that we may afford them.
What does the Act mean by a qualified individual with a disability?
Well, if you say a qualified individual with a disability, that would construe, in my own opinion, it is not expressly stated in the Act, but in my own opinion, will construe to mean anybody who falls within the definition of what a disabled person is, which is basically set out under Section 59 of the Act.
Okay. Does the Act provide for preference for a qualified person with a disability over other applicants?
Not necessarily, but
are they meant to be given any kind of special treatments, basically?
Yes. If you look at the Act, it says that even in employment, when people are searching for employment, when we have a disabled on employment list for more than 2 years, the minister responsible for social welfare should actually withdraw that person from the list and make sure that that person is given some training to enhance his capacities and capabilities. It actually goes on to say that if somebody requires financial assistance in order to keep the person employed or self-employed, that the minister might have a responsibility to assist the person in that direction.
Okay, the Act actually even states that the ministry is supposed to help secure jobs for persons living with disabilities.
Correct.
And is that being done to the best of your knowledge?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, the structures are there. Whether they are functioning is another issue.
So what does one have to do to be able to qualify to be given a job by the ministry?
Now, once you're a disabled person and you're basically entitled to some of these rights that are spelled out under the relevant sections of the Act, you would want to go to where they call the labor offices. Most of our regional and district capitals have labor offices where people can go and submit their names and qualifications for purposes of finding jobs.
Okay.
And so once you're a disabled person and you get on that list, the authorities have a responsibility to comply with the provisions of the Act to make sure that such a person is afforded every opportunity to employment.
Okay. Is there any financial assistance available to help with persons who are disabled but can't access jobs?
As far as the Act goes, the only thing I have seen in terms of financial assistance is the fact that it says that if somebody has been on the list for more than 2 years and is unable to find a job, then the minister should come in and enhance his capacity. I mean, in enhancing his capacity, it could be anything, logistically, educational wise, skill acquisition, and so on and so forth. I suppose that once it's a responsibility of the minister to do this, then it will devolve on the minister or the authorities to make sure that the cost of giving the skill or education to that person, or even the cost of procuring a loan as is spelled out in the Act, would basically have to be borne by the state.
Okay, let's talk about the structures in this country. Does the Act specifically states that they have to be disability friendly? I mean, how easy is it for persons living with disabilities to access such buildings? Let's even talk about hospitals. Some of our hospitals aren't disability friendly. Well, and I understand that even when it comes to public transport, drivers are supposed to reserve 2 seats for persons living with disabilities and so on and so forth. Are all these being complied with?
The Act in its wisdom has a transitional provision. Section 60 of the Act says that the owner or occupier of any existing building to which the public has access shall within 10 years of the commencement of this Act make that building accessible to and available for use by persons with disability. Okay. Now this is very heavily laden. What it means is that within 10 years, counting from the year 2006, I believe that we have just about 2 years to go, that by the close of these 2 years, the Act expects that any public facility would be that which is friendly to disabled people, would that have facilities that would basically give disabled people easy access to.
Now you mentioned that we have just 2 more years to go. Finally, my final question is, if you think we've done enough in the face of the Act and everything to help persons living with disabilities to find employment?
I will be candid, I do not think so. See, but this is not in isolation. A lot of national life is lagging behind, and I believe that it's all part of every Ghanaian knows that we have a long way to go and we have more room to improve. And so like all the other aspects of our life as a nation's people, I believe that there's a lot more we can do.
In that sphere. Okay, that's all the time we have this morning. Many thanks to you for coming through and speaking to us about jobs for the disabled. This has been The Chamber, and my guest has been Kwekwe Frifa Insiasari, who's a legal practitioner. Please do stay with us.